Bob Show.
Still, you want some money to do that?
Not sure it works. Okay. All right, we'll call the Community Development and Strategic Planning Committee to order. And Lynn, if you want to call the roll.
Commissioner Collins?
Here.
Commissioner Cross?
Here.
Commissioner Karasinski? Commissioner Engel?
Here.
Commissioner Jager?
Here.
Commissioner Longmire?
Present.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Here.
Commissioner Plummer?
Here.
Commissioner Stolman?
Here.
Commissioner Snyder?
Here.
Commissioner Wilkins?
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of June 21st,
So moved. Second.
supported by Commissioner Engel, seconded by Commissioner Longmire. Cross, I'm sorry. Is there any discussion on the minutes? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as proposed, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We've now set aside some time for public comment on an agenda item from someone in the audience. If anybody would like to make a comment. I don't see anybody coming forward. So we'll move on to the two items for consideration. The first one being CDSP 12/07-07.
So moved. Second.
Okay. This is to adopt the license agreement for the Lakeshore Jazz Festival, and I'd like to have Bob Lukens come up, and you want to talk about that?
Certainly. Bob Lukens, Community Development Director. The Lakeshore Jazz Festival Commissioners is a new festival, a one-day festival on August 25th. The promoter for it is Mr. Hawkins Lang. He's the owner of a local business in the Lakeside neighborhood, and he's having three jazz performers that are known in the Grand Rapids, Michigan circuit for performing. He's bringing them in for this one-day festival. There will be beer and wine sales, I believe, at it, and food sales at the festival. And he has secured all the necessary permits and whatever other permitting is needed for the festival. He has insurance for the festival, and he's ready to go with that.
Anybody got any questions?
Is there any compensation for the county for that?
Yes, there is. There was a $1,000 reservation fee, and there's a ticket charge of $1 per ticket sold.
Does he, I'm just curious, I mean, it takes some nerve to do this. Did he, has he been promoting jazz concerts, or?
I'm really unsure of that. I don't think he's promoted before. He has some contacts in the jazz community, and he'd like to, I believe, grow this event into a larger event in future years. So he's very excited about bringing it to the community this year.
He's going to fence the property?
Yes, the property, the area called the horseshoe portion of the Heritage Landing will be fenced in. I believe at this point it'll be with snow fencing. Some remaining fencing will be left up from the Moose Fest, which is the weekend before, for the backstage area. So everything will be fenced in accordance with the liquor laws of the city of Muskegon.
Congratulations to whoever this individual is, because this is a big deal. Just even if it's one day, just whether it's one day or a week, it takes the same amount of effort to do it. So I hope it's successful.
Yes, he's the owner of Hawks, Fins, and Feathers restaurant. Yeah, it's over in the Lakeside.
Yeah, it's right by Booker's, right at the end of Booker's.
Oh.
Or Air School.
Okay, well, there's hope for us yet. Maybe somebody will come up with another great idea. Although this is sort of off the subject, but I got an email yesterday from somebody who thinks we need to have a rodeo. Can't do that at Heritage Landing, can we?
No, I don't think we could do that at Heritage Landing.
Send it on to the arena.
There you go.
I can just see the animal cruelty people coming forward at that, you know, you're doing what with those horses? No, so, okay.
Don't even go there,
I know, I'm not doing a rodeo. All right, we've got a motion's on the floor, it's been seconded, so we'll vote on that unless anybody else has any questions or comments. If not, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that one is approved. The next one is CSDP 12/07-08.
Second.
It's the agreement for the Unity Christian Festival live on the Lake Shore. Anybody got any questions on that? Bob, you want to just briefly talk about that?
That's the annual Unity Christian Music Festival. It's a 4-day festival. The first day is a free admission day. All other days, admission is charged. There has been a reservation fee for that submitted to the county, and there's a ticket surcharge for that festival too. There's no alcohol served at that event, but there is food available and other refreshments available. All proper permitting has been secured from the city, and the insurance papers have been submitted, I believe, to the county. Now I'll have to check for sure on that, but it is everything has been secured for that festival, which begins, I believe, the second weekend or the second Thursday in August. August 8th, I think it is.
The Rotary meets on Thursday, and the program today was that festival, and they had Roger Eichenberry and Kevin Newton there to speak about it. And I think last year they had, over the period of the festival, had about 60,000 people. And they had, this number sort of flabbergasted, they had 166 sponsors. So ticket prices are pretty low, so they do that intentionally to make it reasonable for families to go. So are there any other questions?
Just a comment, it draws from all over the Midwest.
Oh, yeah.
It does. It's a large, I think it's one of the larger Christian music festivals
It
in the
is.
nation even.
Right.
He said it was one of the top 10 Christian festivals in the country, so we're lucky to have that here. Okay, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. The next item is old business. Does anybody have any items of old business they'd like to bring forward?
Yes, just one. I was really serious. If someone's inquiring about a rodeo, send that on down to the arena.
I get those about once a week with some idea, so.
That's the type of thing that they're looking to expand, so
That's right.
Okay,
I did that years ago. We filled it up with dirt and had a rodeo in there.
can we see you participate in the rodeo?
Oh, absolutely. I'll try anything. Having luge, I'll go in and ride a horse.
All right, new business. Is there, anybody have any new business? Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry.
Eggleston has a parade at 11 o'clock on Saturday, and Holton has a parade at noon Saturday. I don't know if there's anybody here who cares.
Okay.
Those are around.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? All right, public comment. Yes.
The fair is going on, so anybody that's so inclined, it's been going on most of this week, and it'll continue through Saturday. So if you have time, it's just one more thing that you can go out and see.
All right.
Mr.
Yes.
I'll
Mr.
do a
Moore.
promotion as well. Friday night, if you're interested in old cars, I'll be cruising in Whitehall and Montague, about 500 cars. Drive from Whitehall to Montague and park, and everyone wanders around the street. About 3,000 to 4,000 people.
Anybody else got a free ad? All right, public comment on a new topic. Does anybody have anything they'd like to address this board? Any topic? No? Okay, I need a motion to adjourn. So,
Second.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
opposed, or adjournment.
Motion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, say no. Motion is carried. We'll move on to informational items, the transit and the airport report of June 2012.
Move it be accepted and placed on file.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Jagger?
It seems like is the Go Bus getting out even more in the outer perimeter? Because it seems like we've been seeing it more, I'm hearing more about people using it.
Jim Coons, Muskegon Area Transit. The Go Bus has been going out more, and it is getting out into the rural areas more and more. Again, the clientele on that changes regularly depending on who has needs. And we are countywide, so.
And are we finding a better way to promote this so that it keeps getting used? Or is it?
We are not heavily promoting the Go Bus because of limited capacity, and each individual additional rider, we need to add capacity to get them. So we've not been heavily promoting the Go Bus service. We do promote the fixed routes because that bus is already on the road, and the more people we can get on, the better.
There, further, Chairman?
Just note that the airport percentages seem to be doing well. The load factor is over 50%.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah. Well, Stan, if I could mention, I had a conversation with, he doesn't live in my district, but he's somebody that I use for landscaping, and he has a 22-year-old son who has cerebral palsy, and he's pretty handicapped. And they just started using the Go Bus because his son was asking to have freedom. He wanted to be able to do some things on his own, and the Go Bus has provided that opportunity. He goes to a camp every day, and he can get there by himself now where he couldn't before. So that's a valuable service to some of our community.
Thank you, Commissioner Spelman. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motions by saying no. The motion is carried. At this time, we'll have a presentation by Mr. Jim Coons.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Commissioners, for giving us an opportunity to put this on today's agenda. I do have copies of the slides that I'm going to go through for you as board members. Several months back, we were asked at one of the Transportation Committee meetings to provide an overview of how transit is funded in Muskegon. And so that is what my goal is in the next 10 minutes or so, is to give you an overview of transportation funding. It's not going to be extremely deep. It may prompt questions I'd be happy to answer at the end or in another instance. It's just an opportunity to explain to you how we operate and how we are funded. The first thing that I'll just talk about is capital funding. Muskegon Area Transit uses capital funding resources for a number of different things. We buy buses, we build facilities and maintain facilities, bus stops, shelters, some of the different things we're doing, as well as tools in the shop or office equipment. Typically for capital funded items, whether we're purchasing something, building something, whatever it may be, often those are 20%, 80% federally funded with 20% state matching grants. And many of those are either competitive grants that we request and receive, or discretionary grants where we're involved through the metropolitan planning process or through a federal process to receive a discretionary grant. So by and large, when we come forward, most of our capital requests are going to be 80% federally funded, 20% state. On occasion, it's even different than that. in maybe 100% federally funded program. On a rare occasion, if there's local money involved in one of those, we certainly would point that out. When we present a budget to you as the board, and I know this has caused some confusion in the past, we do have, when we have capital equipment that we've purchased with grant funds, it is handled as contributed capital, and it does get depreciated on the transit system books, and it does show up in the transit budget as depreciation. However, since those items were purchased with grant funds, that depreciation expense that we track is not truly a cash outlay or an expenditure of capital or county funds in the annual budget. So for example, in the 2012 budget that we are currently operating in, our original budget, or approved budget, is about $3.45 million of operating expenses, and our operating revenues, our operating expenses are approximately 3.42, and there's a $600,000 capital depreciation, contributed capital depreciation item in our budget. And that has led some people to think that transit is operating with a $600,000 deficit, and that is not truly a cash outlay, nor is it an expense that we have to pay for, because it's grant funded. So I wanted to clarify that for anybody that may have questions about how that affects the transit budget. So those are two slides, a little bit of information on our capital funding, and now I'll go into operating expenses next. This slide shows you in a pie graph format what transit is spending resources on. Approximately 70% of our budget is salary and fringe. That is for bus operators, maintenance employees, paratransit operators that drive the GO bus, as well as our office staff. So approximately 70% is salary and fringe. About 11% of our budget is fuel currently, and again, with purchases that we've been doing to try to shift to natural gas, we're hopeful that as a percentage of our budget will continue to be stable. Of course, in 2008, when diesel went up, that would have been affected. Some of those other categories include a variety of things. It includes some service on vehicles that we may have vendors do. It includes insurance expenses, tires, oil, a number of different areas included in there. But by and large, as you can see, most of what we're paying is salaries and fringe. The next slide is looking at the revenue side. And for fiscal year 11, the pie chart on the left-hand side shows you from all of the resources that we are using to provide transportation in Muskegon through MATS, approximately 53% of the revenue last fiscal year was from federal sources. Approximately 25% was state sources. 16% was recovered from the passengers in the fare box, and only 6% was from other local sources. The local sources are further described and broken down in the chart to the right-hand side of this slide. We have local contributions of $132,000. We received approximately $44,000 last year in Greyhound ticketing commissions. So we sell tickets for Greyhound. They pay us a commission on that, and that generated $44,000 last year. There's a fund transfer showing on this slide. That was money that we moved from the Muskegon Trolley Company Fund into the Transit System Fund. Many years ago, we ran the trolleys for weddings and events through the transit program, but we've set that up as a separate fund, and that helps to support transit. And there were some miscellaneous categories, including some assets or scrap and some different things we sold. Advertising revenue, concessions, and some other. The advertising revenue amount in fiscal 11 was quite low. That's typically higher. And then in the bottom corner of this slide, there is a breakdown further of the local share contribution. In 1974, when Muskegon Area Transit was formed, the local communities and the county came together and basically agreed that if the county would operate the transit service, the local communities would help to fund and provide local funding for it. And this is the amount of local funding that we currently receive in support of the transit system annually from these 5 entities. This is based on a formula that was devised many years ago. The last time this formula was updated was 1993. So it's been 20 years since we really addressed the formula, and at some point we'll be discussing that again. So that is a look at our local revenues and our state operating assistance. Formula funds from the state of Michigan are distributed according to Act 51. If any of you are involved with road agencies and discussions about rural roads, you know Act 51 is always a topic. But that was the transportation legislation passed in 1951 that governs how state tax dollars are split. So we do receive an annual appropriation of state operating funds. Actually, the state appropriates funding for bus operating annually. And MATS is eligible to receive up to 50% reimbursement of our operating expenses through this program. The distribution amount and the percentage that we actually receive varies every year because it's based on the expenses of all of the transit systems in Michigan, as well as the amount of money that the state appropriates. So for the past several years, the state has appropriated approximately $166 million for local bus operating. And depending on what every transit system is doing, that money is spread out to everybody. The current level of funding of $166 million only permits us to receive 30.65% reimbursement rather than the 50% that we are eligible for. From a federal funding standpoint, we receive a number of special grants. Usually, again, those are 80% funded. We are using special grants right now for some of our outreach and marketing efforts, for our mobility coordination efforts, preventive maintenance on our fleet and facilities. We're receiving 80% funding. Our new service that we put into effect just over 2 years ago is still on an 80% funding grant. And there are other special grants that are available that we've, for various reasons, have not gone after at this point. Formula grants are typically 50% funded. And then go into some more detail on those. When we receive formula funding, and I know with the airport, for example, in these meetings we've talked about them, they receive formula, which is typically for capital projects. With transit, the county is receiving approximately $1.5 million a year in formula allocations. And it's based on population of our urban area, as well as population density in our urban area. These funds are available to the county for transit capital projects or to reimburse 50% of operating expenses after fares are reduced. We're receiving, again, roughly $1.5 million a year. In fiscal year 11, the funding used for operations was only $970,000. This graph shows you a lot of information. I'll try to break it down. The chart is by year, so it's looking back 4 years and including the current year. The columns on the left-hand side with the green bars is the amount of funding that has come to Muskegon County in the formula program over the last 4 or 5 years, and how we have programmed it. So the green section is the amount of money that we've programmed for operating assistance. The dark blue on the left would be preventive maintenance, and then the lighter blue on the left columns would be support equipment. The right-hand column on each of these is the amount of funding we actually expended in those different areas. So the orange bar is the amount we expended for operating assistance, and then the lighter blue would be the amount we expended for preventive maintenance. You'll notice that there is more funding coming to the community for transit in this situation than what we're expending. And MATS is not fully expending the available funding. Some of this, and particularly 2009, 2010, and 2012, was related to the ARA and the stimulus funding that came. And we were able to utilize some of that stimulus funding for our preventive maintenance efforts, and it displaced some of these funds. Now, these funds do carry forward when they're not expended, and so we have a balance of federal operating assistance currently available to us that can support additional services if local matches can be secured. Now, I've gone through a lot of this very quickly. I'm sure it's raised more questions than it has answers, but in summary, MATS federal revenue sources continue to grow. And with the passage of the most recent transportation legislation, which is a 2-year bill, again, I anticipate that that formula program will grow further than even where it is now. There are additional untapped grant opportunities. The state revenue sources have been stable at around that 30%, but again, it is possible when the state is able to address their transportation funding issue, it is possible that that percentage rate can come back up closer to the 50. Our local revenue sources, we are working hard to diversify that. Okay, so we are working, the Greyhound revenues are something we did about 7-8 years ago. We began ticketing that in order to bring in revenues. The advertising sales, we've continued to try to develop a program for that area. And we're working hard to talk with some of our partner agencies within the county. We are doing some transportation for the sobriety court program. In exchange, that's bringing in some funding we can use as local. And we're developing a number of those local sources. But long and short is the community funding, the funding from the local community continues to be a key to delivering this program, just as it was when we began in 1974. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or bring any further information to the board at a later time.
Yes, Mr. Coons, on page 3 on the local funding sources, fare box is just simply the money that the patrons are putting into the box, correct? Is that it?
In this instance, fare box would include the money that they pay if they're boarding the bus, but it also includes ticket sales. So they may be buying tickets from our office or from drivers, or an agency that they are affiliated with may buy tickets for them. So it's everything that comes in as a fare.
So, Jim, how much money are you, federal funds do you have that are you're carrying forward?
I would have to pin down the exact number, but we are currently right now still utilizing our fiscal year, the beginning of our fiscal year 11 money. So,
is it a significant?
well, if we haven't used any of our 12 money yet, that's $1.5 million that we haven't touched yet.
So, but that has, we can't take that person.
Nice try.
You get that, Eric?
Commissioner Davis, did you have a question?
Yeah, the 30.5, is it like going through legislature or anything to try to get this back up to 50%, or is it?
On the annual budgeting process at the state, there are strong efforts every year to try to get them not to cut it any further. The 166 million has been fairly steady, and the state legislature has valued transit enough not to cut that when they're cutting a lot of other things. That hasn't always been the case. I mean, there have been years where they've taken money out of that program to fund other general fund things. But for the past several years, I want to say 4 or 5 anyway, it has remained at that level. But with limited resources at the state, they've not increased it either.
Well, with Detroit, like cutting whole blocks out and everything, is there reducing where we would get more, or as they, because there must be places shrinking, because Grand Rapids just cut two programs out too, I believe.
Again, the way that this, and it's a crazy formula that the state is using, but if every transit system had an increase of 10% in their budgets, all of us would get less. If everybody had a 10% decrease in their budgets, everybody would get a higher percentage. And it's unfortunate, but when we do see another community, if a community has to cut back because they failed to pass a local measure of some sort, or they've had a cutback in their program, our percentage rate can go up. So it does, what everybody else does affects us.
Mr. Longmire?
It was the coolest, but Grand Rapids now just getting that new high-speed bus. I think they approved that. In the future, is there anything like that for Muskegon County that we can get a high-speed vehicle, maybe go straight to Detroit, straight to Chicago, the way that Grand Rapids has their system?
I can't answer how the community would like to go in that. I mean, there are always opportunities available. We can apply for different programs and different grants. Again, when you get to operating services, typically you're only going to get 50 to 80% reimbursements, so the local community would have to identify if that was a priority.
Are there any further questions of Mr. Coons? Thank you very much. We'll move on to public comment on an agenda item. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard? Not. We'll move on to items for consideration. TR 120733.
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, say no. Motion is carried. We'll move on to TR 120734. Approval to award professional engineering services to Brian and Newell.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, say no.
No.
And the motion is carried. We'll move on to TR 120735.
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, say no. The motion is carried. We'll move to TR 120736.
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, say no. The motion is carried. We move to TR 12.
But as far as I know, the buses are kind of full. They need the permission slips, and they need the lunches made, and, you know. However, if there's interest, it's something to get in the pipeline so we'll know in the future.
Are there further questions? Hearing none. Sorry?
New business.
New business. We'll move on now to public comment on a new topic. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.